And the other is, if you will, if you're not talking, please mute. That just makes it easier for the folks that are talking, so we don't get any loop backs of audio or any other issues that pop up. All right. Looks like everybody's getting on. Good crowd. Well, listen, thanks everybody for coming in tonight. I know it's interesting, and especially thanks for those folks that let me know that the original schedule for tomorrow night wasn't going to work because it was a Super Bowl. I watch lots of college sports, not as much on the pro, and totally spaced out on that one. So thank you on that side. So my name is Wayne Bogan, and I set this up simply to try and help other folks. Sean and Anna had been on, and Lori and I had been on another call previously where we kind of just wanted to answer some questions, ask some questions, and that's kind of the intent for the night, is take the ones that have been asked for everybody else, see if we have an answer from anybody. I may have an answer, Anna may have an answer. It looks like David's there in his base camp that we can go through, but if you have an answer, feel free to jump in and provide any details. If we don't know the answer, then I've actually talked with some folks at Airstream on the back end. They called me after the last office hours and offered up that, hey, they may be able to help us out if something comes in, and also pointed me some other resources that we may be able to go to. So not to hold up any more time, let me jump into the first question. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. Feel free to jump in and ask questions as they pop up, but I'll just show what I've gotten in from everybody else. So the first question, and this is a good general one to start with, was what are your top 10 must-haves for the Basecamp? You obviously have the obvious ones, hitches, locks, propane, but what would you list out as the top 10 items that you must bring along? Any feedback from anybody in the group?
Wheel chalk blocks. Sorry, I don't know if that's on there. Yeah, that's important. That's first thing. So important.
I was going to say it's a loaded question because you really need to know what your destination is, what your intent, right? If you're, I mean, it's wildly different whether you're staying in an RV park or boondocking, but for like basic road stuff, I mean, you need some tools, obviously. And, I would make sure that you have sockets and whatnot that fit the most common things, especially, you might, it does have, I'm not sure if it has a tire tool. You got to make sure that you have the stuff and a jack that will jack it up, because I'm not sure that it comes, I don't think it comes with a jack. So if you need to change a tire, you've got a spare tire, but no way to change it. So there's a few things that you need regardless of where you're going. But
yeah, thanks for jumping in, Neil. As Anna said, the wheel chocks, absolutely. The tools, sockets, you're going to need some wrenches. You're going to need your torque wrench for your tires, for the lug nuts, right? And then with that'll come in, it'll say a 3/4 inch socket that you need. And by the way, you need an extension for that to get away from the edge of the tire to be able to get the socket onto the lug nuts. I found the 21 millimeter works better for me than the 3/4. And you're right, the Basecamp does not come with a jack. So either the jack that you get with your car, if that's physically going to work with the Basecamp, or I actually bought one of the little pump jacks from Harbor Freight that will handle, I think it was 12 tons, way overkill, but I can use it for other things as well. And then obviously you're going to have coming back in your water hose. You're probably going to want a separate hose coming in from your black water flush. You're going to need your black tank and gray tank hose for the flushing that out. And then just normal bedding material, other things inside. And to your point, Neil, as you go back in, if you're going to be in a campground, maybe they have a bathhouse, you don't have as much, but if you're going to be boondocking, going out with no power and just off the grid, then definitely it changes the list of things that you need in there. So cool, good start. The next question was really, and I've tried to label these on the left side for different topics: safety, towing, power, a lot for power, maintenance, and other things today. But for safety and towing, if you're traveling, is it okay to leave your trailer hitched to your tow vehicle, and any concerns with doing that? I'll give one example. Is that my wife and I were going to meet my brother, going to Pigeon Forge, and then we actually stopped at a campground and didn't get there till about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and needed to leave at 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning. So I did not unhitch. I just pulled in, set up, put down the stabilizer jacks just for a little support inside, and just totally left everything hooked up. Hooked up water and power, but I did not hook up the gray or black tank dump hose, simply because we were going to be in and out so fast. We did take a shower the next morning, but it was not enough to cause a bit of a problem on that end. Any other feedback from the rest of the group?
Yeah, no issues neither. We've had, we've stayed at Harvest Camps, Harvest Host, and we have not unhitched at all, and it's totally fine. Without even, like, Wayne would put his jacks down. We don't even, it's pretty stable.
I told my hitch is level.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, no issue. As long as, I mean, I think it's for comfort too, because some folks don't like, a lot of movement, but yeah, we didn't have any problems
I told level.
whatsoever. Yeah.
I mean, as far as the theft part goes, I think it's actually harder to steal if it's hooked to your tow vehicle, but some people do neglect to lock the coupler. So make sure you have a coupler lock while it's attached to your vehicle. And then also, if you're going to leave it attached to your vehicle, some of the levelers that have that you drive onto, that you just stick the half moon looking thing under it, and you just back up to where it's level, and you can just back up, set the parking brake, and be done for the night if you're not in a level spot.
Using those Anderson levelers, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not that bad. Just like I said, I would lock it to the coupler, but it's really, I think it's harder to steal because most vehicles are a lot harder to steal than a trailer.
Agreed. All right, so the next question on the power battery. Laura, were you trying to say something? I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there's a certain type of coupler lock. We haven't purchased one of those yet.
Any stain, as long as it's long enough. I think the little coupler thing's a little bit longer on some, but they're pretty standard.
Okay, thanks.
Now I will say, when I ordered my locks from Proven, I went ahead, and it is a lot more money to get. You can get all your locks with the matching key, so that you only have one key. I mean, you're talking a couple of $100 extra on all, to get the little ones that you can get standard at Walmart or AutoZone, but it is nice to have a matching key.
Yeah, I went ahead and ordered the main Proven lock, and I didn't think about the coupler. That would have been a nice thing to have.
I have, we use a coupler lock, pretty inexpensive, and it's just for towing, to keep the lock from flipping open. I can send you the link for that. Yeah, it's super inexpensive. I think someone had asked about it just recently, but it's wide enough to go in. And again, for us, it's just for travel, because we don't want that, the demco thing going up and down. But if you want to go that route.
People will steal your trailer while you're eating in a restaurant eating, though. So it's important for security, but I will say, if you live in an icy area, invest in a little bit better one, and make sure it's got a good rubber cap on it and stuff, so that it doesn't freeze up on you, because those are notorious for getting frozen, and then you're stuck with a trailer stuck to your vehicle. So I mean, don't get like the super cheap ones, but like just make sure it's weatherproof and that it's got a decent lock. Maybe that it's not going to get froze up, because it really sucks if they get stuck.
And David, looks like you get your hand up. Do you have a question?
I was just going to ask Anna again, if the coupler lock, it's for security for your lid, but it's not for anti-theft, the one you're using?
No, no, this is just for travel purpose. It's a long piece that goes right behind your, how your demco folds down. It's just right behind it. So when you're traveling, it doesn't pop up. Now we have the proven industries, and that's when we're stable and we
We're
put that
unhooked
on there.
when we're on.
When we're unhooked.
Right. When I've got that big one with the puck for the front of
Yes,
the trailer,
that's
but
good,
we're
yeah.
also, but we're talking about some kind of coupler hitch when you're actually hitched to your vehicle, right, Neil?
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I mean, just to keep, I mean, but like Anna said, you need something through there just to keep it from coming unbuckled, even if you're moving it around
Safety.
your house or farm or something. I mean, when I was a poor kid growing up on a farm, we'd find just any screw or whatever that fit through the hole and stick a nut on it, you know, just to make sure that that latch doesn't pop up on you. But
Okay.
yeah.
And this is the older version, I believe, of the lock that Airstream used to use. But that's kind of along the same lines. Early on, a lot of these would pop open as you're driving down the road, and you absolutely had to have a lock. The new
Yes.
versions, there's a lot of folks are saying that it's not as much of a problem, but it's still just a safety concern. Once you get it on, hitched up and locked in, just to put that pin in and to minimize any safety issues driving down the road. It
This
shouldn't
is
come
what
loose,
it
but it
looks
might.
like.
It doesn't fit with the proven on it.
Yeah.
So this goes just right behind when you put your demco, when you're already hitched, and then you push that, you know, that little lever down. This just goes right behind it, and it prevents your thing from coming up,
Yeah.
opening when you're, you know,
Keeps
especially
it-
when
it
you're
keeps it
on rough
locked to the
roads.
hitch.
I don't know, as far as, we've not had an issue with this, and this is only for demco locks. This is not for you know, the previous lock where you have to really put an actual lock on it. This is flush from here to here. It's flush to the width of the hitch. So I don't know if as far as safety, if anyone can just, like, you know, like cut that open if, you know, you're parked or whatever. But this is just for traveling purpose for us. As soon as we unhitch, we put our proven industry locks on there. So I don't know. I mean, it's just, if it helps. It looks like this. I can post the link on the group page.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks, baby.
Because we use a proven bulletproof.
Question on the proven lock.
Sure.
Yeah, I noticed on the proven website today, they offer the aluminum as typical, and then they have a stainless steel option. Any sense of whether that's necessary or worth it?
We did the aluminum just price wise because it came with it. If ever, I even thought about it. I'm like, oh, that would be great to have a, you know, a stainless steel, but I think it's preference. It's lighter. The aluminum is lighter. You drop it, you ding it. But I think the locking mechanism is the same as the stainless steel. Stainless steel will be, of course, you know, a lot more resilient and heavier. So it's preference, I think. Plus, if you want to spend an extra $100.
I've seen some people talk about that one of the proven locks that the puck was really easy to drill out, but it seems like that was an older version. I don't know, but of course the stainless steel would be harder to drill out. So
From what I've looked at, I've seen videos, you know, where just about anybody, if they know what they're doing, they can drill pretty much any of the different locks. It's a deterrent for the majority of the folks. There were early versions that they could, in 60 seconds, drill out and they were gone with a proven lock. But it's much more difficult from what I've read on this current version that they have, and especially one that fits the new base camps. But it's a great deterrent to keep, if nothing else, give you a peace of mind. The other part, when you're talking with the insurance company, did you do everything you could to protect your vehicle? Yes, I did. Right. If they come back and say, well, you didn't, you left it out in a campground with 1,000 people and you didn't put any locks on it, you didn't do anything. Oh yeah, that made it easy. And they may push back on that, because I have a friend that used to work in the insurance industry. He used to work on the side fighting the lawyers from Allstate, trying to fight the lawyers or the person asking for money to go back and try and prove that they were doing something wrong. And they would ask those types of questions. Now, will it stop most people? Probably. But to Neil's point, somebody could get into it if they wanted to. Awesome. Okay. So let me jump back over to the next question. So the next question was the battery disconnect switches. What does the stock switch connect and disconnect, and any additional disconnect switches? So when you have the one that comes with it set to the off, it should cut everything off that would pull power coming out of the DC or the AC. But it is, unless you connect something else directly to your batteries. Like I have my power jack is directly connected to the batteries. And so it doesn't matter if that switch is on or off, it's still going to go into it. Anna, anybody else, did I miss anything on that one?
Nope. I think
Nope.
that's it. If it would just be your kind of like your add-on, like a your TPMS, if you have it, that would be something that wouldn't turn off. Your power jack won't turn off. And I think that's it, unless you have something else that you added on.
And I think the one thing, I did test this today. I did go, mine's in storage. So I did go today and the power disconnect switch was off. But the charge controller is still running and it's drawing power as it's getting power from the solar panels, because it was midday going over the batteries, but it is still on measuring to see if there's anything in there, as well as I have the smart shunt that is connected in the BM712, and that uses a little bit of power, but it's not very much, right? Because my batteries are still at 100% of what was on there. Now, if you add any extra work in there, one of the things I'd like to add is an additional disconnect switch in the future is, and today's a good example, I wanted to do some basic testing to see how much power does everything use, but my solar panels were still collecting sun. They were running charge to the battery, very little because the battery was 100%. I had no way to turn off the solar panels. So you can actually buy switches that you can put in line in between the charge controller and the batteries, or the solar panels and charge controller, that you could disconnect the solar panels to save that power coming in so that you don't have anything else. It helps you work on the system as well. So that's something that I'm looking at adding in the future, but I haven't done that yet. So next question.
So Wayne, on that one, so the little black box that's in the battery compartment, that's where all the trailer, like that's where the trailer brakes and everything go through that, right? So that's behind the disconnect, right? I think that's the only thing left, right? So anything that goes through that black box, and of course your trailer brakes, I think would be the most important thing to have, not because a lot of people do disconnect the battery going down the road, but I do believe the brakes stay.
And let me see, this is, I pulled up this is the 2022 manual that I downloaded and looked at. It's slightly different from the 2021. So you have to do it according to your version. But you can see the disconnect switch is in line here, coming from the main panel. The main panel is being fed by shore power. And as you look at that, it does stop everything from any of the fuses that is coming back out of the system, whether it is the AC or the DC, if I'm reading this correctly. Not an electrician, but it made it easier to come back in. So it should shut everything off, going from those DC or AC fuses or AC breakers to the rest of the devices in the unit. But if you've done like I have and connected directly to the battery, something like your power jack, it will not inject those. You can add that in, and I'm looking at adding one potentially over time, but I haven't at this point.
So yeah, you can see the breakaway switch and all that is not on the disconnect. So
Correct.
all of that on the top right should be through that little black box in the battery compartment. And is that where you hooked up your power jack, is to that in that black box, or did you literally wire it to like the battery bus itself?
I didn't go to the bus. I went directly to the terminals on the black box that our batteries are in. So
Okay.
the standard package that I got was the 2 90-watt panels and the 2 AGM 80 amp hour batteries. It has a battery container with a hose going out to vent outside because it was made to cover for lead acid. I have the AGM, so they've just dropped the AGM batteries in the same box they would have used for the lead acid batteries to vent out. And I literally just connected my power jack directly to the terminals on the battery, Could I have come in and tied them back into a bus bar? Absolutely. But it was just shorter and quicker to go to the battery. It was there. It was another almost 2 feet around, just kind of reaching around the black box of holding the batteries to get to the bus bar. And I was just being lazy and just connected directly to it.
So Wayne, just to clarify, like the carbon monoxide detectors and that kind of stuff, that's all after the kill switch?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
And actually, that's a good point that you asked, Keith. I did look, there is and I posted it in both the Basecamp and the Basecamp 20X groups, I think earlier this week. There is a new series of videos that they've reorganized how they have all the videos for the Basecamp. And one of them specifically goes in there and talks about that if you want to shut those off, you need to turn off that battery disconnect so that it doesn't allow power. Otherwise, you have a constant power draw from those. And your carbon monoxide fire extinguisher is battery operated at the top. So you just have to change the 9-volt battery in those. Okay, next was heated lithium. Do you really need them in a Basecamp? And Neil's probably goes to, well, I think your earlier answer, what are you going to be doing? We will get down to some winter camping questions a little bit later on. And so if you look at the different manufacturers, Battleborn being one of the more popular, they will let you discharge down to, I think it's 24 degrees Fahrenheit. But you can only recharge below a certain degree, which I think is somewhere around 35. Don't quote me on those numbers. So if you're going to be in much colder camping weather, you're going to be in the camper and you're not going to have heat on to keep the batteries warm, then yeah, you would need something to be heated lithium, because once it drops below a certain temperature, the batteries will discharge to a certain point, but they won't charge from your panels or your shore power. It's a protection mechanism for the batteries. So if you run your heat, that is supposed to take care of it, or you can buy from the different manufacturers, Battleborn being a good one, heated batteries for an extra charge that when they sense the temperature getting below whatever the threshold is, it'll kick on, and then it will keep the batteries warm. Now, obviously that's going to use part of your battery power to keep the batteries warm. So you have to keep that into your consideration in your camping, that doesn't use up all of your battery power if you're going to be without a whole lot of sun for recharging your batteries. Any questions, or I miss anything on that one?
No, I appreciate it. I just have been thinking through, because, excuse me, in the Basecamp, the batteries are inside effectively versus a lot of the trailers that are out in front on the tongue, which would be a lot colder than if you're in your Basecamp. Presumably you're going to keep, possibly keep it above the temperature that it needs to keep even without heated batteries. So I guess it's kind of a question of what you're doing and how much you're going to be in cold weather without heat, like you said, inside the trailer.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it damages them. So worst case scenario, you have to possibly pull the batteries out and warm them up if you need to charge them. I mean, if you really were out boondocking and you just got dead, your batteries were dead, and you couldn't charge them because everything got too cold, you might have to take them out, put them in your tow vehicle and warm them up, and then they'll start charging. But I mean, there's like you also have to look at the cost versus the worst case scenario, and that's the worst case scenario is basically you're in a dead situation while boondocking. You still, as long as you have some way to warm the batteries up, you can still get them to take a charge. And I don't think it damages them, but don't hold me to that 100%. I just think it won't charge until they're warmed up.
Yeah,
You
I
are
agree.
right, Neil. So we asked and asked, can we please have heated, batteries? And our dealer was like, well, we don't have it available, but you don't really need it because your battery is in the cabin. If you put, like what Wayne said, if you put your heat on, it's not going to damage it. And the cool thing about lithium is you can literally empty it and not damage it and just recharge it. What they do recommend is that to prevent any damage whatsoever, period, just keep it full. And that's it. It won't even, if you go down, you know, beyond 24 degrees, if it's full, it's resilient.
We're always plugged in.
Well, and
So I don't know if that helps.
the discharge process will actually warm the battery a little bit. But Anna, did they happen to say what I was mentioning is, does letting the battery get too cold, even though it won't charge, does letting it get to sub-freezing temperatures like damage it? I don't think it does. I don't.
No,
I'm not.
it does not.
No,
Right.
it does.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, so like I said, that's your worst case scenario, is you have to, like, to get them to start charging in the end, just find a way to warm them up.
Right. Right.
So I wouldn't stress too much over it. I mean, you have ways to recover if you need to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's where you worry. What you'll have to worry about is AGMs when it comes to temperature. But the lithium, they're like, it's,
Keep
you
your
just
heat
keep,
on and-
yeah, you just keep your heat on and that's it.
And I brought this up because I believe it's Ryan in Slow Your Roll. He just did a video a couple of days ago going for a ski trip. And not only did he talk about what he was doing, but he actually went in and put additional insulation inside different areas to try and minimize challenges with the temperature. Right? And so it'd be a good one to take a look at to see what he's done that would help out on that side.
So if anybody would like some additional information on that, I'm in week 3 of being in Breckenridge. I've had temperatures literally as cold as -31. And I will tell you that the Basecamp water lines, first of all, the ones on the sink run on the outside wall, right over the wheel well, and they are not insulated, and they do freeze. And the same thing for the shower and the toilet. They're less likely. So since I've been here, I've actually gone in and insulated those and keep my doors open. But it's a real challenge to winter camp and a base camp if you don't do some things before you go.
Thanks for that, David. That makes lots of sense.
David, did the freezing cause any leaks? I mean, I think
No.
it's all PEX, right? So
It's all PEX.
Yeah, so they can expand like 40% or something. So, but none of your joints started leaking or anything. That's what I worry
No.
about.
No. But also another issue is with your discharge, you know, for your black and your gray tanks, because the tanks are heated and that's worked quite well. But the discharge, you know, pipes that come out to where your discharge handles are and all, those froze on me. So I went out and I insulated those. And what I've done that actually works is I got one of these LP fueled heat lamps that you set on top of an LP tank. And I just sat it right in front of the discharge. And then I took some reflectix and I built sort of a little cover around it to keep all the heat in there. And it takes a while, but that actually works. Right now I have no issues, but it took a lot of work to get to where I am right now.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I don't know that I love skiing, but I don't know that I want to carry my base camp up and go through all that.
Well, that one temperature, that -31, which where I'm staying in Breckenridge, they actually have a weather station. They document it. It was actually that cold, but this is one of the coldest winters, or one of the coldest, I guess, periods, not winter, that they've had. It's warmed up considerably now, but most nights we're below 0.
Very good.
And by the way, the base camp though, I've never been anything but warm. I am toasty warm in here. So
Excellent.
yeah.
So awesome.
I have the furnace, you know, mine shipped from the factory with the furnace fix, and my vent that's up next to the door, there's no CFM there really. But I also have a gas filled electric heater that I supplement with, and I stay. That has never been a problem. I've been really warm. I just some mornings don't have water.
Very nice. So the next question was battery monitoring options. Should you stick with Victron? Do you need a shunt? And do you, the screen versus app. So I guess depending on what device you're using, you can get the little display screen that you can look at, or you can just use Bluetooth and use the app. So what is the group's recommendation on what you should or shouldn't do?
I think this
Well-
comes back. If you're a boondocker, I think it's worth it. But when you're out there and you really need to manage your power and get it to scrape by, if you're using it intermittently and just I think then it's kind of more of a curiosity and fun to play with. So, but I think if you're really serious about trying to go off grid, it's worth it for sure.
Other thoughts?
So my the one that came with the Basecamp never really worked, and I got the dongle. So I have the dongle, with the display on my iPhone, and I'm not sure that I really understand that app enough. And if anyone knows of like a good little YouTube video or something that kind of explains how to read everything that's on there and how to set it up, there's obviously some things that that you can do to customize it. But if anybody knows of some place to go get some education on that particular app, I'd love to do it.
That's a good point. I don't know, David, of a specific video, but that's something I'm interested in.
Debbie, oh, I don't know Debbie's last name. She's on the Basecamp page. Debbie, let me take a look. She is an expert at it. She has the dongle. She had some issues with her, I think she had AGMs, and she actually used the dongle and was able to navigate through, but it works on lithium too. But I believe she is very well versed with that Victron dongle. I'm thinking about getting it, and but it doesn't look like it's well, I don't know. It looks intimidating to me. It's probably the same thing because I'm looking at the how do you Bluetooth? How do you know?
There you
So
go. Yeah.
It's the same thing as the smart shunt. That's what we're talking about.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's close. Yeah.
It's about $50, and I bought one, and while I had my unit in getting some warranty work done, I just had that. They just popped it on for me.
I bought both the dongle, the VE direct connect to my charge controller, and I bought the smart shunt BM712. And so I'll show you a picture of this. I am, David, by the way, an expert, but
Okay.
on the smart controller, it lets you see the solar, and this is the voltage and the current that's coming from the panels
Right.
down. So that's always good because I never really know. And one thing I did notice in doing this is that, and today's a good example, when I went to my trailer, the battery was at 100%. You can't see it from this one, but with a smart shunt, you can, right? And so I was getting 0 watts to 1 or 2 watts coming from the solar panels. And that's because the solar panels were essentially trickle charging the batteries. Between the controller and the batteries BMS in it, it was actually managing what was going on with the battery, and it didn't want to overcharge the battery. So it actually decreases the voltage when the battery's full. If you're using the batteries and going down, then what I'll watch is, I'll do this, I'll turn the battery disconnect back on. It lets everything flow to the AC and DC devices, which can be to the DC devices, because the AC, it won't connect anything through without an inverter. And then you can turn on the lights and turn on the water pump and other things, and you can see the battery getting used. And then you'll see the wattage on your panels go up because it now senses the battery needs more power. Now, how to go through all of the pieces, I haven't gone through that, but you can come in and look at it. And it will also give you a history on the history tab of, well, how much power did you get from the panels today, yesterday, et cetera. And this example that came in and showed that on that particular yield, it was 240 watt hours, and the max the panels had reached. So I had two 90 watt for 180, it had reached that particular day 118 watts, and it was going at 21.8 volts coming back in, right? If you look at, let me find the picture of the smart shunt, it's a little bit different because it's just focused on the battery. And the smart shunt is kind of like your gas gauge in your car. It tells you how much battery charge you have. If you use the standard MPPT controller that comes and tied back to the charge controller, as you saw in that previous picture, it'll show you the voltage, and you know that you can get a charge and you can figure out a range of what you want your voltage to the battery to be. But when the battery is being used, your voltage drops while it's being used. And so it's a little bit of a misnomer because it doesn't, you see it dropping down, you think, well, I've lost 30, 40% of the battery. You might not have. You might have only lost 5% or 10%, but it's harder to read. And so if you get the smart shunt, there's both the 712 that I bought that comes with the shunt as well as a display that you can install, or you can get just the smart shunt by itself, which uses Bluetooth and uses this app. And then here you can see what's going on with the battery itself. It'll tell you the voltage, and you can see that I'm at 97%, but only 12.9 volts because it was actually being used to some degree when I was using this. And you can see what the current amperage draw is, how many watts are being pulled out, and how many amps have been consumed. And it'll tell you an estimate based on what you have on right now. Hey, I know you're at 97%, you got about 12 hours of battery life left. Well, as soon as I turn on the water pump and turn on another set of lights and do other things, well, the time remaining obviously will decrease because your usage increased, right? It's like me with the heavy foot with the gas. The more I go speeding down the road, the more gas it uses in the car. So they're both good devices. And I think, I think it was Neil saying it's great to have if you want to look at this, and especially if you're going to be boondocking, because it does give you that gas gauge to look to see what's going on. Can you go without it? Absolutely, right? It's not a have to have. I like to tinker. That's why I went ahead and got both of those.
Now, one differentiation mode between the shunt and the dongle would be if you're going to use auxiliary solar especially on the auxiliary port, and it'll have its own controller. The shunt should monitor at the battery, so it'll be monitoring the activity from both controllers essentially. I mean, you won't be able to tell when everybody says this controller is doing that, that's this controller is doing that, and they attribute a lot more intelligence than there really is to these things, unless they're in float mode. But yeah, so that is if you're going to use auxiliary, maybe go for the shunt.
Yeah. So you're talking about the portable the auxiliary port on the outside, where you set up another set of panels.
Right. So
Yeah.
the shunt should, yeah. So then if you put the shunt, that should monitor both controllers, right? Where they enter. So right. So if you're only gonna use rooftop, the dongle will monitor, pretty well.
Yeah, because what Neil's going through is you have power coming from your panels into your charge controller, which goes down to a bus bar and comes into the positive side of your batteries. And then you can use external panels connected into that auxiliary port, which is going to come back inside. The shunt is going to be on the negative side of your batteries. And so it's measuring everything being drawn out of your batteries. So it gives you your total view, right? Versus the controller that comes with the Basecamp is only looking at this charge controller. It doesn't look at the auxiliary, right? So you lose the visibility of any additional power coming in, other than the fact that your battery voltage may be increasing or decreasing. And keep me straight if I missed something on that.
No, that is true. And then, like I said, if you're running two controllers and you're getting into float, if you have the capability, especially if there's an option on your external auxiliary, turn the float off on one and only float with one controller. It would be my recommendation. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. The whole concept of two sets of panels charging, we debunked that, but that's where you run into the issue is when the batteries are full charge. Any other time, it's no worries on that. That's all I know to add to that.
Thank you. All right, any other feedback on those? And hopefully that was helpful for you guys. All right. Wiring, how do you determine what gauge wire is needed? super technical. Anybody want to take this, or and I can try to answer as we go through?
I can take a stab at this. The biggest thing is, I mean, amps. I mean, basically, you can look at the amp rating. I mean, especially on any AC wire, 15 amp circuits, you're fine with 14 gauge wire, and it's much easier to work with. You can always use a heavier gauge wire than what it's called for, though. Just because a wire says it's rated for 30 amps or whatever, it doesn't mean you can't use it, but it's a lot harder to work with to run through walls or whatnot. And controlled circuit wires are usually pretty simple, you know, standard, but that would be my thing. You can look at the packaging on the wires and see, but definitely you can run into some pretty high amps on the charging system. So, and you do need heavy gauge wire, and it is important. You do not want to undergauge your wire, overgauge if anything. Do not undergauge wire on some of these charging things, because when they really get going, it adds up. Especially when if you're adding solar to anything, like you add a bunch to the roof or something and try to combine them together and run through the auxiliary port, you could run into some issues, and you might need to rewire your the feed from the roof to your batteries.
And if you look at that, because I've seen a couple of videos on that end, that you'll come in and you think, oh, I've got, well, like the Basecamp, it has 3 ports at the top. Standard install comes with 2 panels, so there's an extra port to come back in. And you think, well, I've got 290, why don't I put a 1,000-watt panel up there? Well, now you're putting different types of panels, wiring, you get into configurations, but as Neil said, at the end of the day, you know, watts and volts equals your amps, right? So watts divided by volts is the formula equals amps. And so when you change those two, then your amperage can increase, and each of the wires has a specific particular size amps that they can handle. And when you started exceeding that, I did take a look at the Basecamp manual and noticed between the 2021 and the 2022 manual that I think on the Basecamp 16, and I think this is right, whereas in one of the different ones, the wiring that Basecamp was put in with on one of the earlier versions was a 8-gauge wire. And then in some of the other versions, it looks like a 10-gauge wire, right? And I think that the higher the number, the less amperage that it can carry, right? Because you want the smaller number. A 2-gauge wire is going to carry more amperage than a 14-gauge that you have in your house. And so when you want to determine the wiring, there are multiple calculators out there. There's explorers.life. There's a great website you can go to, and you can just plug in the stuff for your panels. But a lot of the manufacturers have the same. They'll tell you put this in, but it also depends on distance.
Wayne, another thing to keep in mind, and this is just edging on the side of technical, is so when you look at how you calculate your amps and whatnot, it's a direct multiplication of the voltage. So when you have 12 volts versus 120 volts, your amps go away, or an increment of 10. You know, so it's a lot more amperage on a 12-volt system for the same amount of watts as it is on a 120-volt system. So the gauge of the wire that's why it's a lot more important on the low voltage system if you're going to be running very many watts. So that's why the charging system is important, because for the most part, low voltage wire is going to be running light loads, and it's not an issue. But when you start running charging things through 12 volts, then you start getting current real fast. And it also is very dangerous. This is, if you are unsure, definitely don't do it yourself, because 12-volt power, it will really hurt. And those solar panels can trick you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Neil. And that ties into the next question, is what gauge wires are used in the pre-wiring and how many watts will they support? And I think Neil said it really depends on the volts. And we're looking at the voltage from the panels, the voltage going to the batteries. A lot of the system is 12 volt, right? And so the more you put through there, then it ties into that amperage. But I did pull up, yeah, so this is the Basecamp 20 on the 2022 manual. And it shows that it's an 8-gauge wire coming in from the roof down to the charge controller. So the wiring diagrams, and it shows it for both the 16 and the 20 in here, but that's an example that you can look at that because you can overcommit yourself. And if you put too much amperage through those wires, if they can't handle it, you can also find other charts out on the web. This is just a representation, not exactly the one you should use, but it will come back in and tell you, once you do your calculation of the amperage, which wire to use, but it also ties in the distance, it ties into the voltage, right? So just because this chart is good, notice the one thing that's missing that Neil's talking about is, where's the voltage here, right? It doesn't show it. So if you aren't calculating your voltage, you can mess up and think, oh, I only need a 10 gauge when you may be over here on a 4 gauge and you've just undersized your system.
So Wayne, real quick. So based on that schematic from the Basecamp manual, there seems to be 2 8-gauge wires, the one green and the one yellow, and that's supporting the entire 3-port up there, the little ZAMP 3-port input, right? So there's not multiple sets of wires, one for each port. There's just the port goes in and then it puts it down into one set of wires.
Correct.
Okay, and they're 8-gauge.
Correct.
Okay.
And for example, I watched RV with Tito. He is redoing a new remodeling, I think, a Class A motorhome that they've purchased. And he had just put 1,740 watts of solar panels on his roof. And if you watch the video that he put out, it was either today or yesterday, you'll see the wires coming from the solar panels or a smaller gauge than the wire that he has coming from this junction box down to his charge controllers, right? Because the other part is this combiner box is doing just that, right? It's combining the watts, the volts from these different panels to one. And then when you're coming back the other side, the wires may be fine from the panel, but coming down may not be enough. Because that's why you have to be careful to look at what size additional panels you want to add to make sure that you're not going to overrun your capacity that you have in these 8-gauge wires. Otherwise, you got to re-pull the wires or another set of wires in there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that port worked, whether it was 3 separate isolated ports or it was just one combiner. It looks like it's a combiner, so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a combiner. I haven't pulled mine apart to look at it, but I think that's what it's doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's perfect.
But hey, Wayne, on this point, a guy on the other Basecamp forum asked a question that made me think of a few things. So if you do not get the solar package, it appears that they take the wires into where the solar packages, they take it where the controller would be, and they're just coiled up there, I believe. So you do have to terminate those wires, I believe, if you add solar yourself. But and I had finally click that all the solar wires are yellow. I'm like, oh, duh, yellow, because the sun's yellow. So, if you're tracing out wires, it's easy to spot the solar wires because they are yellow. Then you can see in the diagram there that the ground is green, but the wire is yellow. So just remember that yellow equals the sun.
Agreed. And I think I also saw to that point, Neil, somebody was asking the question of, well, can I buy just the batteries and not the solar panel? And I guess you can negotiate with a dealer and say, can you just put batteries in? And I'm gonna have somebody else put in the panel and the charge controller if they're pre-wiring the things coming down the wall. What would be interesting that I don't know is, in addition to these wires, and I thought about this as I was looking at another RV video on YouTube. What else comes down that channel where that wire's coming? Is there any other wires that maybe some of the 120 volt wires or DC wires going out to other parts of the Basecamp? And what sometimes in some of the different RVs, and I don't know if Basecamp does this, they'll tie strap all those wires together just to make it easy to pull everything as a bundle. So when you decide that if you wanted to upgrade these from 8 gauge to 6 gauge or 4 gauge, right, it may be a bit of a challenge to have to pull those through. So it'd be a good question to ask Airstream how they did that. Could you just pull those through right? Can you just tie the wires together and pull the bigger wires down through, or is everything tight strapped together so that you're going to just have to pull a whole new run and figure out how to do that?
So Wayne, I don't think you can get them with no battery at all. I think because of the breakaway package, there's always going to be some kind of battery they put in there.
Yeah, lead
Otherwise that won't
acid.
work. Yeah, I think it might be lead acid. So I think in his instance, what he did is, because there's the ports up on the roof. I think he tried to wire like an external panel to that, and then he wasn't getting any charge to the battery, because I mean the panel had a built-in controller, so he just plugged it into the port, but he used the one on the roof, but nothing happened because all that's cooled up, and doesn't go anywhere. So.
Okay. Make sense. All right. What are most people doing with their solar ready port? Does anyone input their existing solar charges, or will it not handle the additional input? Anybody thought about upgrading to the Red Arc Manager 30 system? I haven't used my external solar, but I think a couple of you guys may have already, and I have not heard or used the Red Arc system. And I'm not sure if this is the one on the roof, kind of like you're talking about, Neil, or if this is the one, that auxiliary out on the side. Wade, are you on the call? I was just looking to see if Wade was on the call.
I think he's talking about the one on the side though, but
Yeah.
I don't have any experience with that.
Yeah, I didn't, if I remember correctly, you do need, when you get your panel, a charge controller to go with that panel to plug into the port, because it's on the diagram. There is a charge controller for the one coming off the roof, but there's not a charge controller for the others coming in. So your external panels do need to have a charge controller on those.
You might be, if there's room, you might be able to install one if you wanted to. You could put a controller in the battery box.
Yeah.
And bring it into that, rather than having it on your suitcase models or something. But most of those have the option of having the controller built in.
Yeah, agreed.
But if you have a variety that a lot of people do really like, hodgepodge some stuff together, and just basically wire, panels together, and it gets pretty high amperage. So you just got to be careful, but you can run all that into one controller if you want. And you can mount that in the battery box if you want.
And Keith, since you're on, I know a bunch of these, I think probably were yours. Is there anything else that you needed? Just so before I leave, we're going to ask the one last question on batteries and then move on.
No, this is super helpful. Thank you. Perfect.
Awesome. Any experience with Lion Energy or any of their equipment? Okay. I personally don't. I've watched a lot of videos of some folks on RVs that use Lion Energy and really like them. There's another one that I've been looking at, because when I upgrade from AGM up to the lithium ion, I'm probably going to switch to, I was debating between Battleborn. I've been looking at Lion Energy for a long time, but I've also been looking at SOK, that is a kind of a knockoff at a much lower price and supposedly works really well, but it's not going to have the support level that I know of that Battleborn has, nor the warranty that it has. But there's lots of them out there, and they continue to grow. More and more vendors are coming out. Okay, so water pumps. I'll put these two together. So interact discussion on priming issues. He said he has a hard time visualizing some of the discussions. And are there any common issues, and how do you diagnose those? So anybody have experience on priming and talking through and helping to go through that process?
Other than it can be a pain in the butt, and you gotta hold your mouth right to get it to work. I mean, some of these things, it's just like there's no magic answer. It's just if it's losing prime, sometimes you open the faucet, close the faucet, try different combinations. Try opening the shower, try opening the outdoor shower. Try to get as much air out as possible is the best advice. But sometimes it's just they're cantankerous.
I agree with Neil. You just have to try everything. When you turn on the water pump and it doesn't work very well, you just have to turn on your sink, flush the toilet several times, the outdoor shower, and eventually, if it's always an air issue, right? And it works after you release all of it.
I've had it happen in my house before too. I had a bathroom. I worked on a bathroom sink and it got air in there and it got airlocked and I just could not get. I couldn't get it to come out and like I just left it open and like a month later it just started running. So it's weird. But I'm not a plumber either. This would be a good question for a plumber. They might have some tricks.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up, I've seen tons of posts on the various Facebook groups for all the Airstreams, and it seems like a lot of people just, oh, my water pump won't work, and so I got to take it to the dealer, and then it sits there for 2 months, and then they pay, however much, and then somebody else says, well, you just got to prime it, and I'm like, well, how does anybody know whether or do you carry another water pump and you should replace it? I don't know. I just wanted to try to learn ahead of time so that, but it sounds like you just have to kind of go down a laundry list of trying different things. I don't know.
I will say from my experience, those water pumps are pretty resilient. I've had some that like I left where they were running dry for like a week, and they ran fine for years afterwards. I mean, they're pretty, they don't real, I mean, I personally in 20 some odd years have not had any problems with the water pump itself. It's just about air in the lines for the most part.
Well, that's good to know because I've seen a lot of posts of people having theirs replaced, and I'm thinking, well, is that just the dealers don't want to tell them there was nothing wrong with it, or who knows?
Well, and I think too, Keith, overall, as I watched most of the groups, and before I bought the Basecamp, I was also considering Grand Design. So I was in a bunch of their forums. And what you end up seeing a lot of those is all the problems everybody's having. When nobody's having a problem with the water pump, nobody talks about it, right? But in some cases, you do have issues. What might help us on the Basecamp, and I was just thinking about it, because the winterization kit that they installed. So you've got that little tube that you could take a jug of water and instead of doing antifreeze that you would use in the winterization, it's right next to the pump. And there's a little filter that you need to clean occasionally right there at that spot. You could turn around and put the winterization tube into just a bucket of water, turn the valve, and then try to pump something. If it's in the pump itself, if it's in the lines going up to the shower or the sink, like Neil's showing, then that's another issue. You're trying to get water up through and up to there. But getting into the pump itself, that might be an easier way for us because you do have a way to get water, within inches of the pump right up to it by using that winterization kit.
So it sounds like everyone needs to get familiar with the winterization and the tube there and the water pump. And
yeah, when it works, it's pretty easy. I had to cut mine out and redo it because it was installed incorrectly. What I had heard from the different forums, right or wrong, was that they had ordered the right part but got the wrong one from the manufacturer for the valve. And so when you turn the valve and it was installed according to the instructions given to the techs building it, it was trying to pull water out of the tank over to your bucket, not going into the pump itself. And so I just cut it out. I had bought another one because I wasn't sure if it was bad. And so I just went ahead and installed the new one, turned it the opposite direction. And then now the water went from my winterization pipe through the valve up to the pump and didn't have any problems from there. So that's an fairly easy fix. Everything's super tight in the Basecamp, so it's hard to get to, right? Kind of like David's talking about trying to put in insulation in different areas, right? It's, if you have big hands, it's not easy to get into, but hopefully that'll help you if you run into that issue.
so that's the main issue though with the water pump, is just the priming that people have been having, nothing else really to know about ahead of time, just more the priming and the winterization kit. Those are kind of the things to make sure of.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that's an easy one for somebody who hasn't picked up their Basecamp. Just have them take a bucket of water, turn that valve and turn on the water pump, and water will either flow into that winterization kit or it won't. Right. That's a 30-second check for the text when you're picking up the Basecamp.
I've even gotten desperate enough before to try to draw suction on some of the plumbing fixtures. The easiest one are the shower fixtures because you can just take the head off and then, I mean, I'll be honest, I just stuck in my mouth, kind of like trying to siphon gas. But you know, I've had that work once or twice. You know, like I said, it's playing with it a lot of times when it gets up into the plumbing. Because I mean, the plumbing runs kind of circuitously through most RVs, especially when you're running these winterization valves and stuff like Wayne was talking about.
Well,
So air capacitors are easier.
one other comment on the pump. Actually, I've been very fortunate. That's the only thing that's gone wrong with my base camp. I had one to fail. And as we were going through the process, I learned that there is a little adjustment on the pump too. So when you run it, you need to take a really small little flathead screwdriver and kind of adjust it to where you do it. I was doing it by sound. I don't know if that's just until it sounded like it was pumping properly, wasn't making a lot of noise, but there is an adjustment there.
And some of the pumps have a priming cap where you can add water to the pump. And I don't think these do. I haven't looked closely enough, but some RVs they will. If you look on there, it's just you can unthread it and add water to the pump itself if it's just dry and won't suck water.
Good to know. All right, next question. Water purifiers, demco, inline. Did you use a Berkey, both, something different? This also gets into a bigger question of should you drink water out of your freshwater tank? Anybody want to tackle that one?
I think Anna can address that.
I will not drink out of that tank. Sorry. No. I don't know. So what I've heard is if you we leave our tank full constantly, after, I don't know, a month or so, standing water is not safe. So we always, I will disperse water, put it in the Berkey, and then drink it. I just don't trust, I mean, anything in there, especially, you know, after it's been delivered. I don't trust what's in there. So I do recommend, we do use the Camco filter, the blue filter, when we put water in the tank, but still, I still don't trust it. And then from there, disperse water in the Berkey. That's what I do. And we haven't gotten sick yet. So
I bleach my freshwater tank.
I haven't done that. I haven't done that. That's a good idea.
But here's my thing on that antifreeze. It says it's potable in air. I dare anybody to crack that open and take a drink of it.
I know.
Not gonna do. No, I don't. After it's had antifreeze in it, it's just like, I mean,
Just don't trust it. Don't trust it.
But you're still washing dishes and stuff with it, so it's still a good idea to bleach it and kind of keep it rinsed out.
True.
So I mean,
that's true. God, I didn't even think about that.
I'm like Neil, every time I pull mine out of storage, I bleach it. Take a couple of ounces, what's appropriate for it. I forget how much you're supposed to do for 27 gallons. It's like 4 ounces. Sometimes I'll put in 8 ounces, right? And what I'm also starting to do is taking the bleach and pouring it in my freshwater hose that I use. As I was back in and make it go all the way through the hose and then connect it to the water. And then when I take that, I actually take and connect the hose with the bleach in it to the tank so that the bleach goes through the hose back into the tank, because you're supposed to dilute the bleach before you put it in the tank so that it doesn't destroy the actual pipe going down. Because when you lift the bench up, you can see the pipe that goes down into the tank. We've used the water, but that was only the first couple of times that we've camped. And so I'm looking at either using Brita, buying a Berkey, or doing something else, or carrying bottled water or gallons of water for drinking when we're doing other work.
So
Go ahead,
so for the water that's provided by the various RV parks, whatever the source might be. And of course, it varies quite a bit. I use the clear source, and I'm just using the 2 filter. They have one that's 3 filter. And of course, you have to use 2 hoses. But I just bring this up to let you know that recently they introduced it's a bag that you will set the clear source device down in, and it actually, you plug it in and it will operate to about 10 degrees. I actually bought one of those before I came here. I placed it underneath the base camp, and then I have hoses coming in both sides that are heated. So I had 3 devices I had to plug in. So I had a splitter, and then I plugged that into the external outlet on the base camp. And then of course, the extremely cold weather we had negated its usefulness. But if you're in some place that you're just going to get, some temperatures maybe that are below freezing, I think this device that they have will probably work quite well. But anyhow, I love the filter. So when I'm in places that where the temperatures are moderate, it works quite well. And but I still, for my drinking water, so that's for all the water in the base camp. But for my drinking water, I still use my Berkey.
All right. Oh, and then, yeah, like David was saying, the Chemcos, whatever you use, it's still good from the campground water, wherever you're getting it, to have that filter in to take out any major particles, right? Because you don't know what's gotten into the water lines. And that's just getting dirt. And, if you get an area where there's gotten mud in the water for whatever reason, it shouldn't be. But if it is, because I've been to some campgrounds where the water in the piping was a bit murky. And it had been because it had rained so much before and somehow it's getting in their system. That cleans that before we come in. But then there's a second question of should you drink it or not? So thanks for the conversation. All right, black tanks. Somebody have a question?
Yeah, hey, just real quick on that, on the Camco, I assume we're throwing that after the freshwater hose.
It's interesting. That's a good question. I see most people put the Camco in the campground right at the spigot where they're getting the water, and then they take the freshwater hose over. I actually do the opposite. I take my freshwater hose to the spigot, I go to the Camco, and then I go into my trailer.
I had a quick comment with the bleach, because I used to make water filtration systems using hypochlorous acid. One of the things, and I'm new to we're getting our base camp on Tuesday, but it's to my understanding that is the water tank made of steel, or it is. So just bear in mind, bleach, sodium hypochlorite reacts with steel really fast. So when it reacts, the disinfectant, or what you would call the active, loses. I'm going to use this. Loses its potency, if you will. So you're going to have a lower antibacterial rate, like a 2 log or 3 log versus like a 6 log reduction in antimicrobial stuff. So just bear in mind that when you do that type of stuff, it won't kill all the germs. And don't get me wrong, it will kill the germs, but it won't kill the germs as fast as what you think it will, because most of the time the hypochlorite is just being reacted to the metals in the steel. So just bear in mind when you do that. It works fine with plastic, rubber tubing and all that, but
yeah, I was under the impression that the stainless steel was just a cladding, and that the tanks themselves were like what is it, not PVC plastic. I think they're lying. I don't think the tank itself is technically steel.
Yeah, I think you're right, Neil. And Matt, thanks for bringing that up, and congrats on getting your base camp. I think Neil's right. Matt Starr, I believe, had posted videos at one point where there was an issue in the Basecamp 20, the first year it came out, and I've got the first year, that the tank was listed at 27. They now listed on the brochures as 24. And it's because the drain valve is a little bit higher than the bottom of the tank. And so he wanted to address that. So he actually dropped his tanks and ended up building a kind of an ingenious little padding of styrofoam or something underneath to lift the tank up so that everything flowed to the drain valve to maximize the amount of water that was in that tank. But yeah, Matt, is a great reminder that the Clorox and other things help. I think it is a PVC plastic of some kind for the tank, but it's not going to kill everything. It's just a great way to clean it. And I try to keep it clean on a regular basis. But now that we're starting to use the Basecamp more, I'm shifting more towards using some sort of filter or bringing some sort of fresh water from big containers or in bottled water. Try to avoid the smaller bottles, but the more I've learned about it, the more I'm moving away from drinking the water that was out of it.
Yeah, I think they can make, to my understanding, they make some kind of ORP that's almost a 6-log reduction that kills a lot of the bugs that's floating out there. So if I find anything, I'll let everyone know.
Okay.
Yeah, there might be additives better than bleach, but I do fill the tank all the way up as hot. I get as high a concentration as I get and fill the tank up as high as I can get, with water, and I'll let it sit overnight when I bleach it, and then I'll drain it. And Wayne, I agree with you. I put my filter. It's usually got the little spring-loaded thing that will kind of keep it from, flexing. But you're hauling your hose in storage compartments. Your hose is going to get some particles in it. I mean, you're how it is when you're camping. It's raining. It's nasty when you're, so your hose is not going to be super clean. So I'd rather filter the water after the hose.
Yep. And I just noticed that. I apologize, I hadn't paid attention in the chat. There were 2 questions. And then I think Matt, one was from you. And Matt asked the question early on, what socket size do we need for the scissor jacks for the stabilizers? And remind me, I know I've got it in my bag. Is that the 3/4 21 millimeter?
Yeah, it's the standard.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. And then one of the other questions, well, actually, I think it was more a comment. Ralph had said that he noticed that when he had his battery disconnect off, but he was still seeing that 0.4 to 0.6 amps were being drawn as a minimum charge as he was coming back in and looking at usage on his batteries.
Hey, Wayne, I have a comment on the stabilizers that, since this is for newbies, especially if you're newbies to our RVs, one mistake people make is to try to level their RV with their stabilizers and actually use them to jack, because especially if you are, raising and lowering them with an impact wrench or something, you can really get some torque on them. That is not a good idea, and they will wear out, and you will end up replacing your stabilizers. They truly are stabilizers, not levelers. My 2 cents on that. Just keep in mind.
Great feedback. Okay, black tanks. Recommendations on treatment, troubleshooting, and best practices. Anybody have, well, other than David, you talked about yours freezing. Anybody had any problems? Or David, you want to jump in and talk about some of your experiences?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's very specific to extreme cold weather. I mean, I guess just for people that don't have experience with it, it's a good idea, I think, to let it get pretty full before you empty it, and make sure there's plenty of liquid in there, and use some type of product, and they're very common, that you can put in when you first, right after you empty it, add a little water, and then use one of these to keep the smell down, and those type things. And then when you can, I carry a separate hose that I do not use for any drinking water, and I connect it up to the black tank clean out. And after I dump it, I'll connect that hose, because it's my understanding that there's actually a spraying device inside the tank that helps clean that, and then dump that. And then of course, dump the gray tank after that so that it will clean the hose.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I do similar, David, is I actually either with Clorox wipes or some cleaning spray. I do use a separate hose for the black water flush, but I'll actually still clean the spigot before and after use.
Right, right.
Just to make sure that it
Oh.
not only is clean for me, but clean for the next person as they come back in.
There you go.
But David, I think you're right about the spray. But one thing I do is I will, before I put mine up, there's an external one that you can run into the toilet on a flexible hose, and then you can clean out that all the connections to the toilet as well. I only do that before storage, so.
Cool.
How about the smell?
I've never had a problem. I've really never had a problem. And I'm living full time since August and never had a problem with smell.
I agree. We actually use a liquid, like Pure Blue, and it's really inexpensive, but that's just for, our own, it's a smell goody stuff, but we've never had any issues. Even in summertime is the worst. It should, but no problems. It doesn't come up.
Stefan, raise your hand.
Yeah, so this was my question. I've never had an RV or dealt with a black tank. I don't see a lot of questions come up on it. Is it kind of dummy proof as as just following the directions on whatever product you're using? Is that why I don't ever see much of an issue, or is it just people don't talk about it?
Really don't talk about it. That black water.
You just get your knack down. But let me tell you something I just bought, and I got my stack of stuff over here. I might grab it in a second, but so I want to be able to pump mine. So there's a couple options for pumping black tanks. One's a macerator, which actually is a device that's built into your. You can build into your. Usually mount it right next to the outlet, and it'll actually grind up your solids and pump it through a regular garden hose, so you can run it to wherever you need and it'll pump it. Those are expensive and hard to put in. The one I got actually connects to, you put a garden hose in it, and it has a kind of a focused garden hose spray that sprays it down the hose, and it will supposedly pump the black waste up to 100 feet and up to a 3 foot in rise. And the hose, it's about 1.5 times the size of a garden hose. So you have to buy a hose, but I mean, there are some options for that. But other than that, if you're not getting into anything complicated, it's pretty much get a decent hose, make sure your connections are tight, or you're going to get crap sprayed on you when you try to dump it. It is pretty simple. It's gravity and poop.
And I do take at the end, after I've disconnected my drainage hose, I'll actually take the hose I use for the black water flush that's connected to the spigot, and I won't touch it, but I'll spray over the top and just get even more water flushing through just as an extra check. I do occasionally use a tank treatment, and I'm using the Happy Camper, where you just put a little spoonful down in. I did see an interesting, and I was pulling up Grand Design just to look at, some of these big rigs have 50, 70 gallon black tanks. I mean, they're massive, right? Versus the little small one that we have on the base camps. And so you get the poop pyramid, right? Where they haven't cleaned it out well and it just builds up. And the National RV Training Academy does these videos, and they did a Tick Tuesday, I think they call it, where he actually tested two different products. One was Unique, and the other one was, which I expect was probably Happy Camper. And so he actually to simulate it, and I don't know how to get a simulation is, took dog food and put it into Ziploc bags and put the different products in both of those bags and added water. And the Unique liquid, which you just pour like a capful down into your tank, within a short period of time, totally dissolved all the dog food. Versus what appeared to be something like the Happy Camper in a little container. It was breaking it down, but it was slowly breaking down because it's adding bacteria directly to your black tank to try and help dissolve it. And then, Neil, like the pump you were talking about, I actually saw Changing Lanes, their YouTube channel. They were visiting friends, mooch docking in the neighbor yard, and they needed to clear their tank, and they used one of those pumps and literally took a hose up to the toilet in the house and pumped everything into the toilet.
See, that as gross as it sounds, that's actually my plan because my base camp is parked right outside the door, and the outside door goes to a half bath. So for now, I bought enough hose and that pump that I can pump it into the toilet in my half bath if I need to. I probably won't even use it that much at the house, but it is going to be a guest room because I have a small house. So when people are visiting, I'm going to let them use the bathroom, and I'm going to do the dirty deed through the toilet. But I'm actually looking at crawling into the house and installing a septic connection. And I am going to install a septic connection at my in-laws' house so that when I park there, I have the full hookup.
Doesn't that answer your questions on the black tank?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got one more question.
Yeah.
A lot of poop talk, I guess, for me today. Is everybody just using the RV quick dissolve toilet paper? We're bidet folk. I've got a portable bidet. There's not better options out there, is there, for more comfortable toilet paper, or any ideas there?
I've either bought RV or you can get the cheap Walmart. I've seen people do testing with that and it dissolved quickly. Bidet, you're right, it's going to be the easiest to minimize any of the paper down there.
Let me just jump in. I've done not a lot, but a small amount of kind of offshore sailing, and on sailboats, anybody who's smart, there's not one piece of paper that goes down into the toilet system. And so what they do is they keep, like a little bag in there. And a lot of people have these, you can get them on Amazon, these little black plastic baggy things that seal up, that you literally can get a million of them for pretty cheap. I'm not saying that's environmentally friendly, but they just put the toilet paper into a little black thing and seal it up so that it doesn't smell. But there are most of the good sailors I know will not let one piece of paper go into their toilet system. So that's an option if you can figure out another solution that's not, super bad for the environment for the toilet paper. And they just use wipes. Then they just take wipes because they're not worried about, putting it in a system. So that was one thing. And then I had one question about the gray tank. Does anybody put anything into the gray tank to kind of keep it clean, / if soap got in there or different things that build up, or is that really not an issue? Or are you super concerned about what kind of soap, shampoo, other things get used? Does anybody have thoughts on that?
I have an answer for both Dustin and Keith. So Dustin, we've never flushed any toilet paper. There are RV toilet papers out there, but I'm kind of like I'm Filipino. We have tabo. It's kind of like a bidet ish. But yeah, we've just never flushed anything down there just because of, just I guess just, safety and security. Sorry.
Yeah.
But,
so a tip on that real quick is a diaper genie.
Yeah.
Seriously, I know a lot of RVers that use it rather than the Ziploc bag. So what it is, it's just a long biodegradable, and it makes like a hot dog, right? So,
Yeah.
and it stores it. So yeah, that's
We have one of the just black bags in our I actually just put a hook and I put a black bag. This is where we dump the stuff, and it just never goes down the toilet. And when you're flushing, it's like smooth. I'm the flusher. I'm the dumper of the gray tank because my husband's disabled, so I get to do all that stuff. It's so easy without those toilet paper. And then Keith, oh gosh, sorry, what was your other question was
what do you put in the gray tank, if anything, to keep
yes.
like build up from shampoo, or are you very careful about what soap and shampoo you use?
We use the same that we use in the toilet. So last summer, we were out in like 105-degree weather. The toilet didn't smell, but the sink smelled kind of funky. So it's the same, it's that we use liquid by Valterra. It's called Pure Blue. It smells like bubble gum. So we put the same, and it's safe for gray water as well. So you just put as many, I think it's like 2 ounces in the toilet. I put 2 ounces in the gray tank, and it solved the problem. It just, I don't know if anybody notices, but your sink sweats, and it does, if you don't have proper ventilation, it just smells funky, like your sewer. So that helped out. That solved the problem.
And like Gary, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I had a question about the bidets. Is there a bidet that people use for the toilet, or any suggestions?
We have a little tushy portable bidet that we use like when we travel overseas, but it's pretty rudimentary.
Mhm. But it works?
Yeah, it works. I don't know if there's any that maybe have like a nozzle that like a little pump or something. That would be nice. Ours is kind of just the old fashioned squeeze style.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
REI or someplace like that's a good place to check for stuff like that.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Anything else on black tanks or gray tanks?
I run a little CLR through mine. I don't know if it does any good or not. I like CLR, but just because of the calcium stuff. But.
Cool. Thanks, Neil. Okay, on the heaters, any issues with the heater cycling on off, and how to diagnose or repair any of the issues? I think Heath, this looks like yours.
Yeah, I've just seen a lot of heater posts, and I'm wondering, just wanting to kind of make sure I understand what's real and what people have figured out, and so I can avoid, really try to just avoid the dealer and know what I'm doing. And maybe the heater fix has fixed it for most people, but I know that there's still been some people talking about the heaters and having to pull the power, and who knows. So I just thought I'd ask.
I haven't had any issue. Mine came with the fix. The one thing that I do notice, because there's no choose 65 degrees or choose 74 degrees, right? It's just a lever you move, and it has a scale that goes up. And what I see is that there's a good range between when it cycles on and off. So to me, it gets a little bit warm, and then it starts getting pretty cool. It doesn't maintain that constant temperature as much. And so it's not a big deal for me, but I can feel a little bit of that difference. What I've seen more of the cycling on and off is, I've seen a lot of that too, is not actually the heater, is the water pump. When it gets real cold, the water pump, in the 20, you have the Suburban, it has a device to protect it from freezing inside. So it will actually turn on and off to try and protect itself, if I understand correctly, or something along those lines. But from the furnace, the few times that I've used it at night, hasn't been a problem. Probably a good one would be David, with all the winter camping that he's doing, and see if he's running the issues.
No, actually, as I mentioned earlier, I did get the factory, upgrade to the furnace situation. So I have the 4-inch outlet right underneath the wardrobe, and then underneath the bed. As I mentioned earlier, the outlet that's right next to the door, almost no CFM there. So, I'm not getting a lot there, and I'm supplementing with a oil-filled electric heater that I keep up front. But I tell you, the Suburban, now I have the same problem you do. And before I came out here, I wanted to install a digital thermostat, but I just didn't have the time to get that done. And I have the same issue. You're kind of guessing where to set it to be at whatever you think is the right temperature. But the Suburban furnace has been a champ. I mean, it's Mine's running right now and keeping me very toasty warm.
Totally agree. I got the same fix as you did. It's just the gauge, but
Yeah.
you kind of almost it's kind of almost so simple that you kind of feel, the temperature
Yep.
kind of thing to where, yeah.
But I mean, since it's heat only, a new digital thermometer there would be fairly inexpensive, and I don't think too hard to install. That's above my pay grade, but I am at some point going to do that, because I think it would be better if like when I leave during the day, I turn everything down, so that I won't be burning propane or using up electricity. But I do want to keep the propane furnace going to a certain temperature, because that also heats underneath the base camp and all the other components within it, so that they don't freeze. But I don't really know where I'm setting it. I turn it down, but I don't know what down is. I mean, it's sort of a coin toss.
I've been wondering about I've got something pulled up here on Amazon, and I don't know if I can share or not, but it's a it is, I haven't shared on Zoom in forever. I've been on Teams. Let me see. Can y'all see that?
Not yet.
Sorry.
After you select
okay.
your option,
Yeah.
there you go.
There we go.
Wonder if something like this would help. That's a 12 volt. It's got good ratings. An inline booster for some for that. I haven't tried this. This is just an idea I had for that, because it is 12 volt.
Yeah,
30
probably
bucks.
would.
For the furthest discharge.
Yeah, or wherever you're lacking.
Yeah.
So I'm not an electrician. Do you think you could wire that so that it only came on when the furnace was on, so that you weren't blown? I assume you could have it switch only on when the furnace is blowing and then off when the furnace turned off.
You could technically tap the 12 volt to the fan, but I don't know if I'd mess with that. But I don't know. That's a good question. But I mean, you could put it on a switch though, and then when your furnace is on and you needed it up front, you could, just turn it on.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go.
Just a thought.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that.
Or basically Airstream could fix it.
Now that's crazy talk.
But I'm like you guys. I think I'm at some point going to install a digital thermostat.
Yeah.
So my wife can set it on 78 degrees or 84 degrees when we're camping.
David doesn't even need a thermostat. I don't think his kicks off, probably.
Could be.
You'd be surprised. Here's one other issue for heating too. So where I'm parked, even though it gets brutally cold at night, during the day with full sun, and my base camp is exposed on the curbside to that, and that happens to be obviously where the sink is and those pipes. I mean, it literally the wheel well on the outside. I mean, you put your hand on it, it's almost hot. I mean, so good full sun on this aluminum will really, and obviously if you camp in the summertime and you're somewhere out in the desert or whatever, you'll notice it too. But it really does help. And shoot, man, it gets really hot in here, even in these cold temperatures. And so I'm at that point, I can almost turn it off. I don't turn it off, but I turn it down as low as possible.
So David, do you have any modification that you use to get the hot air from the back vent up above the bed, or what do you do about that?
No, I don't. I saw someone posted the other day and they had some flex coming up above the bed, and I think they had it secured right there at the back door somehow, but no, I don't. But my pillows on that end stay very warm. And I try not to obstruct that any more than possible. my bed configuration is just a kind of, I'd consider it a double bed. I'm just on one side, on the furnace side, and which is very comfortable for me. And I actually use the Airstream mattress topper that they designed for the front dinette, and it's kind of a half moon, but it fits quite well back here. And then I got some sheets, some custom sheets that fit it exactly. I got those from Tokta, Tochta, and it makes a great bed. And then the curbside storage is still available. Plus I can stack things on there, place things on there. It gives me a lot more room. And I can walk all the way to the back. So I'm telling you that to basically say that that back vent is more exposed than if you had the bed made up in a king size bed configuration. It was totally enclosed. Yeah.
Thanks, that's helpful.
So along those lines, and I looked, I don't see that Scott is online. Asked the question about the regulator switch for the tanks in front. I'll see if I can't post this in the group. I did go look at one of the Airstream videos, saw the particular unit. I haven't looked at mine to see the name, but I did see it online, pretty easy to purchase, and obviously you can do the install on that side. But does anybody know the particular model of that regulator switch? Okay. Talking of propane, curiosity, David, how much propane do you use while you're there in that cold weather?
I don't want to tell you. I've got 3 tanks and I kind of rotate them. And by the way, I'd love to hear some more conversation about an easy way to get the tanks in and out of that container up there. It's, it's just not designed very well. Plus I forget what it's called, but I got this special little connector that actually tells you how much gives you some idea of how much you've got in there. Plus it's supposed to be a safety thing. But I'm going through a 10-pound tank probably every 3 days.
Man, you're in really cold weather, so you're going to be running it.
Yeah.
Even when you're out, you've got it down low, keeping everything semi-warm. Okay.
Exactly.
Hey, David, I had some thoughts on the propane, but so it's just 4 bolts that hold that whole shroud on, right?
Yes.
Because what I'm thinking about if you could replace those bolts with some kind of a quick release and just pull that whole shroud off, and it's not that heavy. If you could reach down in there, and I'm 6'4" and I got long arms, I can reach down in there and pull a pin out or something and make a quick disconnect. But the reason I'm thinking about it though is because I have a really tight backyard, and I bought if anybody's interested in seeing it in person on video, a trailer valet to move my trailer around.
Yeah.
So you can't use it with the shroud on, so I want to be able to pop that shroud off and then move my trailer where I want it in the yard, because it'll be there, a pretty decent amount of time, and I'll leave that trailer valet on it probably, and then I can turn it back around and move it back out and hook it to the truck when I need to. But I want to be able to just pull that whole shroud off, because that's what I used to do on my other travel trailer. The whole thing just lifted off.
Okay. Yeah. It's just so tight, and I can bend the lines around a little bit. When they get really cold, that's even hard. But there's just not really sufficient room to easily pull the tanks out. I mean, getting them out's easier than putting them back in, but I just think it's a poor design.
I agree.
That-
What we do is we actually go on ladders. Like we go up on ladders and actually pull from.
Right.
But yeah, that's
I don't have I'm 6 feet and I don't have a problem with that, like lowering it down. It's just there's not enough space to kind of,
Right.
kind of jockeying around. And I'm so afraid that I'm going to actually rupture one of those lines or something. Yeah.
agree. I agree. We agree.
Hey, on those lines, David, have you ever looked at, do you think you could fit bigger propane tanks in there if you could handle the ton weight? I understand there's some considerations
Yeah.
there. If you took the tray out, and I mean it's all thread, I think, right? I wonder, could you put a 2 30-con tanks in there?
That's what I would think.
You probably
great-
can, just taking the tray off
But
though.
you'd have to-
That's what I'm saying. Take the tray out and
Yeah,
and change the, I don't know what the proper name is, but the little device right in the middle that just, that screws in, just make it taller, right? So
Yeah.
that the lines are up there. I'd love to do that, quite frankly. I'd love to have bigger tanks.
Make a custom front cover too.
yeah.
yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's adding some weight directly on the front of your trailer, so you got to consider that. But I mean, if you've got a half-ton or bigger tow vehicle, you probably are fine there.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Good idea. All right, winter camping and winterization. Right, so David, obviously you and I think Anna, you guys camp a little bit in cold weather, and some of the others have as well. How do you approach winter camping with your base camp? Do you winterize, not winterize? David, it sounds like you've got some good feedback of what you do on that side. And then how do you deal with sub-freezing temperatures?
Well, let me just say that, I'm full hookups, I'm using everything. I'm not winterized, so to speak. And I've actually, with Matt and with Matt Starr, and there's another gentleman that's really good at it, and he does a lot of the same thing I'm doing. He's just not there for long periods of time. And we've gone back and forth on different things to do. But probably, if you're going to really get serious about it, out for the discharge, the black and the gray tanks, probably a better answer would be to build a box around that so that you could have some way to heat it. And then I've got some pictures. I don't know if I've posted them or not, but where I insulated all the water lines going to the sink. And honestly, since they are right on the outside wall, I don't think it has to get too cold for them to freeze up, quite frankly. You don't have to be in the kind of weather I'm in right now. So I just took some of that neoprene, wrapping, and then I've got some other insulated tape, but it's so tight. And then I took some Reflectix, went underneath the sink and got behind the pipes and tried to push that down so it would be between the pipes and the outside wall. And so last night it was -2 and I had plenty of water, and so there. But from the factory, it's not suitable. You really do have to do a lot of your own additions and things.
Anybody else with feedback?
You know what? I've been doing mine kind of just since I got here. I was really ignorant and didn't prep a lot of things the way I probably should have. I do have air skirts that I used, and I'm kind of mad at myself because I wanted to get like a digital thermometer where I could see the difference in the temperature directly underneath the base camp and then outside and then in the base camp, and I didn't do that. So I'm not really sure how much that the skirting is helping. I'm sure it's helping some, but I didn't really prepare a lot. So since I've gotten here, I spent a lot of time. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of upgrades and edits and just sort of engineering it as I go. So that's why I'm really looking to see if anybody else has any good suggestions. I haven't used a lot of heat tape because I just really don't have the capability to power it, find different ways of powering, because these places are very remote and I'm not in a place. If I were back home or something like that where I have a good place to work on it, yeah, maybe, but I can't do that here. So I've been primarily using insulation. I will say that I got a heated hose from a company, quite frankly, the name escapes me right now. But these people make heated hoses for, oil drilling in the Arctic and military and all that stuff. And this thing has been awesome. It's just been awesome. I've had no problem whatsoever in any type of weather with getting water to the base camp. And then, of course, I insulated the connections. I got a 90 to where it goes into the base camp, so it wouldn't be putting a lot of pressure on the connector there. So it goes straight now. But then, man, I insulated those connections both at where the water comes from and the place I'm staying here. They actually have a box out there, and they've got all the conduit and all the piping is wrapped. And but the thing is, they use the 20 amp circuit, and they forbid anybody from using it for your own use. So I'm using the external 520 R2 on the base camp for powering those kind of things, since I can't use the one here for the hookup.
David, I've got a redneck suggestion for you that we used to use around the farm.
Best.
And that is the little heat lamps that have clip-ons that you can use. We use them for keeping chickens warm in the winter, but
yeah,
they're real lightweight. They don't weigh anything because they're aluminum, but they're reflective, and they got a heat. If you got enough juice out of whatever, I mean, you got a 15 amps, so because you got to use incandescent bulbs, right? So
yeah,
they're about 100 watts each,
Right,
so
right.
You can put, and then if you can find a place, because they usually clip on about anything, you can find a place to clip on, and you can aim the heat lamp right at whatever you're trying to warm up.
There you go.
And then just unclip them. And we used to use that around the farm a lot.
That's a great idea.
And, I mean, you can get clip-on heat lamps, but I'm just saying the ones at the farm supply store, like Tractor Supply or something, they're cheap.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of using the same concept for the dump area with the LP. It's a heat lamp that connects onto the top of a 10-pound LP tank, and it works really well. I mean, and people typically use it just keeping, whatever, a small office that's unheated or whatever, warm or whatever, and that kind of works. I bought some ceramic heaters. Went to Walmart, just bought some little small ceramic heaters, but it opened my breaker when I turned them on, because I've got my other gas-filled electric heater on there too. So, I wish that they would offer a winterized option with the base camp. I mean, if you think about the fact that this model is designed to be off-road and to be rugged and stuff like that, I really wish that they would offer, which might even have a 50 amp, connection, and make sure that everything is properly insulated and those kind of things, just like they do a solar option.
That's good feedback.
David, one misconception real quick on the 50 amp. I think a lot of people, I've even said, well, I'll put a 50 amp, connection. So I got 240, 50 amp. No, you don't. You're never going to have 240,
Right.
I mean, a lot of people, I'm not saying you don't understand that, but I'm just saying it's a lot of clearing up. You're only working with 120,
120
in any 30 amp
yeah,
travel trailer. There's not, I've never seen a 240 and a 240 volt 30 amp travel trailer. Now the 50 volt, they're 50 amps are 240. So you have two hot legs.
Sure. Yeah.
So when you're upgrading the 50 amp stuff, I mean, you're pretty much, you have to change out the whole panel, and they just have to redesign.
Oh yeah.
And so
I'd like to have more dedicated circuits, where I could connect more things.
having two hot legs in the panel would be hot. Yeah. I mean, that's the advantage of 240 is being able to split those, because you essentially you just got. It's like having two whole panels versus a 30 amp.
Exactly.
David, have you thought about so this is what we do, because we have a ceramic heater. We have one of those solar generator. Well, it's not a generator.
Oh yeah.
Those EcoFlows. So we plug it into the 12 volt while it's running, and we stick our ceramic heater while you're,
Great idea. Great
it
idea.
works.
It
It
Keeps it
works.
I
real
know.
good.
My only problem is I'm running out of room.
Yeah, true. Well, no, because the delta will slip right under your dinette seat. So
Right.
there's your, and you know, you can plug anything else like anything else than your heater.
Yeah.
Well, we have the luxury.
It's
of
got
a
the
big vehicle to
the-
carry.
your inverter, you know, I mean, it's got the built-in inverter, so
Yeah. No, that's a
something
great
to
idea.
consider.
Yeah. Well, since I'm full timing, that space underneath the front dinette's pretty full right now.
Oh, it is. Oh, bummer.
But that's still not a bad idea. And I
No.
could match one of the smaller, what do they call, Echo Flows or something
Yeah,
like
the
yeah.
EcoFlow, like, so they have the Delta and the Delta Max,
Yeah.
and then the Pro.
Okay.
The Pro will still go under, but it's huge. It's 100 pounds.
Yeah.
It's nice, though. It's on wheels.
The Max is 50 pounds, and then the Delta Max 50 pounds. Delta is 38 pounds, but it's enough. It's like I think I want to say 1,300, and those ceramic heaters are what, 1,200?
Yeah, or more.
Yeah, and you can actually plug it as you're using it into the 12 volt. So
Right.
you're constantly, if you're on shore power, you're constantly, you know,
Yeah, good idea.
Switching in, charging your.
yeah, you're charging
Yeah.
and using at the same time, and you're running
yeah.
both.
Great
Something
idea.
to think about.
You're forcing
Yeah,
more
thank
hot
you.
air in. So it'll stress your other heater less.
Sorry, somebody's talking over here.
Sorry. Didn't mean to get involved.
Stop. Anyway, something to think about.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
You're welcome.
And I think, and David, you kind of mentioned it, or Neil's mail did, how much power, the place you're saying, is it just 15 amps that you have, 20 amps? Or is it a full 30 amp?
No, I have a 30 amp connection, but what the point I was making is that, you know, typically at all your RV parks, you have a 50, a 30, then there's a 20 for, like, you know, just convenience outlet or whatever, and you plug stuff into it. Here, they won't let you use that 20 because they're using it for heat tape and to keep the water source from freezing, right? So what I'm doing is I'm not using that. I'm using the external outlet on the Basecamp to power my heated hose.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just doing the math in my head, thinking about some of the different devices getting hooked up and how much power you're going to pull. Because
Yeah,
even with a 30 amp connection, you only have about 3,600 watts max.
right.
And so if you run one of those space heaters at 1,200 watts, well, you've just pulled 1,200 out, and then you're
Yeah.
pulling power for other items. And if you, to Neil's redneck solution, which I use that as on the farm as well, you put those little heaters. If you got two of those heaters or lamps underneath, I mean, you've got the propane or the tank for yours. Two of
Yeah.
those is another 200 watts, and slowly
Yeah.
things add up. And we're so used to
Oh,
being
yeah.
home and just plugging things in and everything works. But with the Basecamp, you are limited on total power.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so let's switch over to other questions. I see Dustin had to leave. He was only in between, I guess it looks like he's working at the airport in between planes. He had a question about essentially internet, right? Should you use a tool like WeBoost? Should you use, there's others you can use, Mimo or some of the other devices you can put in. Does anybody have any experience using these different ones?
We have the WeBoost. We love it. We opted out of the we opted for that opposed to the Airstream Connect. Airstream Connect is expensive, so they will install the antenna, but you have to use their service. WeBoost is, I want to say, probably either have to lower of the price, but you use your own hotspots and it works.
It does.
I
You can do
work
cheaper screens,
occasionally
anything.
at camp and when we're camping and it works. Only if like if that area does have it you know what do you call it, like like services, but if you're a dead spot, it's We Boost or even
But I'll put up a bigger
Airstream
antenna.
Connect is
I got
no
a
good.
tall antenna I'll put up on the truck.
So anything without, you're going to have signal challenges when you're in a remote area anyway.
Yeah,
Regardless
agree.
of what device you use.
We are all waiting on Starlink.
Yeah, if you're in the northern elevations, it works well. Once you get down around the central US, it works less. But Anna, up in your area in the PNW, it's really great. Lots of people use it up there. But
Right.
and he's I think there's 4 models of those.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out because we're going to be traveling towards central to east sometime here, and I'm
Right.
curious to find out because we're like we're not going to have any connection. Oh my God, what are we going to do?
Get a taller antenna.
Oh, he thinks we need a taller antenna. We already have a tall antenna on the truck.
How you get it, the more you can receive. It's passive. It's just there to receive.
Oh, jeez.
Just plan. You just plan on unplugging when you go to those places.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
I'm retired, so it doesn't matter.
Can't work from those places very well.
Don't have to work.
Yeah.
You don't
If
have
you got to work, you just got to plan it in places that get signal. I will say
Yeah.
the cellular maps that they have on their internet are worthless.
And it's up in Starlink, just a side note. I think they just tried to put 46 satellites in space and 40 got destroyed because of a solar flare or something along those lines as they put them in the past week or so. So that may delay part of their deployment. But I know they're trying to work that out because it's a challenge if you're out. All right, so maintenance, repairs, leaks, fixing. I've had very few issues that I've had to deal with other than the winterization kit that I mentioned. How else are you guys handling that? Things that you see break, what do you carry with you to try and fix something? Because this looks like a question from Dustin. It was both inside as well as potentially outside of the trailer.
Yeah, I guess my question kind of is like, what supplies are you guys taking to make the trip keep going? Like what kind of tape are you taking, kind of sealant, that sort of stuff? Like what's in your maintenance box as far as just fixes on the roads?
Awesome. Thanks for joining back, Dustin.
A lot of it comes down to how much weight you can carry because the tools and what do add a lot of weight. So if you're using a unibody type tow vehicle or something, you have to limit it. I myself bring a pretty good sized toolbox with even a few like snake bite PEX connections and a few things like that. But I mean, when you're counting, I know people that count ounces instead of pounds on their toes, so I carry a lot, so I overpack.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
I always carry clear silicone. And gosh, what is it called? So your black water clean out always pops out. So I always carry like the black RTF. I gotta find it. But I always use that to like seal stuff. Nano tape, VHB tape, just in case, because something's gonna fall off and you're gonna need to put it back up.
Let me show you the ultimate tool for any camper. This right here. I don't know if you can see that. That is a Leatherman.
Hey, it's a Leatherman.
Top
I got
of the line. Top
Yep.
of the line. This
Yep.
is essential for every camper right here.
Yep. I got
Yes, it
one.
is. Don't $140 has about 26 tools on it.
The Leatherman and duct tape, all you need.
Yep. Oh, yes.
I'm telling you,
Dustin.
if
Oh,
you're trying,
550 cord.
if you're
Dustin,
just
the
get-
duct tape and 550 cord. Always. You're gonna need it.
zip ties, I always have zip ties
Yes.
and wire cutters.
Oh, and Velcro strips, you know, like the thin strips like this long. Cause I've had to I had to use that Velcro strip that goes around for one of the it's the propane.
It's a pile on either side. right?
Yeah,
It attaches to
it
either side.
attaches on both sides. Those are amazing. You're gonna need it for something like the propane cord or
Some of
something.
us have them like twist tie,
And
like red
Oh.
ties.
yeah, but more professional.
But
Command strips.
again, make sure you have everything you need to change your tire on and not just in perfect conditions on flat pavement.
Yeah, like I carry a Via air pump, command strips inside, because every time I turn around, my wife and I are looking, it's like, oh, I wish I could hang something here. So we went from a jacket to a pocketbook to, well, can I put a towel over here? And those are easy to put on and take back off. And so I keep plenty of spare command strips, so that if one does fall off, well, I'll just put another one up. It's easy to, because if you want to rig something up temporarily to hang something, we'll just put a couple of those command strip hooks, tie it up, string it up, and when you're done, just pull them off, and then you never notice that they were there. I'm like Neil, I carry a lot of the different tools, and I keep adding a little bit more. I went to Home Depot the other day and bought a really big bag to put my torque wrench and some of the larger wrenches and things in it, and just keep adding more to it, because I'd rather be the Boy Scout and have more than I ever need. Right? How do they say it? It's better to have and not need than need and not
Right.
have.
That's right. And tip, so we cleaned up our base camp today and just kind of reorganized everything. That tray in the back, I totally forgot about that tray. So the tray and the side nook, awesome space, you guys. So don't forget about that part of it. I mean, like for the folks that have the 20 and bungee cords. Always helps.
And the other thing that I just added to my toolbox is I've carried a multimeter for power, but the touch pins that you can put against the panel when you come up to the campground that will tell you if the panel is hot. I mean, the outside of the panel, because you can get what does they call it, hot skin? That if there's if a wire's loose or something's broken, if you put that pin right up to the panel before you plug in, you know immediately if that whole panel is hot. Or you can touch it to the outside skin of your base camp. And it'll tell you if there's any electricity running through it. Since they're using the frame as a ground, there's going to be something that goes there, but you don't want it to be enough that it's actually going to shock you as you touch it. Probably overkill for what anybody would need, but it's a short little device. I just press the battery, touch it up against the panel, and it lets me know if there's electricity on the outside of the panel, or if any of the outlets have power or not power, because you can then check anything. And I got both the 100-volt up version before you can check the AC outlets. I didn't buy the one for the DC.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen here for something that I got for my truck. And if you have something with a truck bed, these little things are great. They swing in and they take the space up behind your wheel well, and they're probably pretty much flush with your wheel well, so it doesn't take up any of your center space. Those are great. I have this bed mat too, by the way, which is also great. It matches the headliner that I'm getting on the truck cap. But and then Wayne, to your point, I carry a polarity checker. It's very important to check the polarity on your hookup before you hook up to it. And if you have a surge protector, it'll do that for you. But if you don't have a surge protector, Airstream even included on mine, it's just a little thing you just plug in that checks, because if you plug into your reverse polarity, which some of the RV campgrounds are bad about that, the Airstream is grounded, to the frame, which is also connected to the aluminum. I mean, to the outside. So it can energize the entire inside and outside of your Airstream if you hook your power to a reverse polarity power source. So that's important to have. Check your polarity before you hook up is good, or you can do it after you hook up. But
Yeah, and that's very similar to what I bought. You know, as I bought it was like $15 on Amazon. It's just a detector that I could detect that. And then polarity, I always try to. I've got the surge guard, but I'm starting to point where I want to check it before I even plug my surge guard up, just to see what's happening. Okay, so Dustin, any more questions, feedback on that one? Since you were able to join back.
No, thanks. Like I said, just as a new RV person and not really a super handy person, I guess maybe my generation never learned that stuff. Just trying to make a list of things to take to keep the trip rolling.
Yes, makes sense. Well, that was a list of all the prepared questions. Any other questions anybody wants to go over? Things that you'd like to know about?
oh, hey, on the tools, real quick, a cordless drill.
Yeah.
Or impact wrench. They're a little noisier, but you can get a little more torque out of them for raising and lower your jacks and whatnot. But a cordless drill is vital.
For your stabilizer jacks, yes.
Just cordless.
Just saves you so much time.
I'm sorry, I'm lazy. I will go get my cordless drill. I'll go to take a light cover off. I use it for
You're like my husband. He torques it to enough, and then I get the manual. So I don't have to work so hard.
If I have to turn a screwdriver more than twice, I go get my drill.
That's right. Why waste time?
And Neil, that's a good point. If you have to, for whatever reason, get under the driver's side bench to get to your hot water heater or your water pump, the others, there's what, 6 or 8 screws in there. Mm-hmm. It's great to have that cordless drill just to pull all those screws out versus having to sit and turn every one of those.
Get a decent one that has a flashlight built in on it. I would say I have a DeWalt 20 volt set up, and I have all the tools for that. And like I even use the DeWalt a little leaf blower and all that, so the batteries are match up. So you just bring one battery charger with you, and you can get what I would do, I suggest, is pick the kind of cordless tools that you want and stick with that, so that you have interchangeable batteries. And then and I have a duffel bag that I keep a few different cordless tools actually in, and other tools.
So quick question, does anybody like pull in when it's dark? Like, yeah.
All the time.
So, yeah.
Those little lights with
We
headlamps.
found just little lights, those inexpensive,
Just
like
push.
lithium lights that you can charge if you put it like an
like
air
marker
strip,
lights.
like a marker light. That's helped us because we're constantly fighting when it's too dark. Like, we have a backup camera on our 20, and it's got a one of those night visions, but it's not enough, we found.
Well, if I can see like a certain light that's on the ground, I could get there.
Yeah. Like we got one of those like 6 lithium lights, and I just turn it on and I just place it on the spot. So I don't know if that's really helpful for others, but it's really good safety. So I don't know.
You could probably get some little LED rope lights and permanently mount them up under the frame rail under a switch and just light up the whole perimeter of your campground.
Good, yeah.
Because those are
we're always arguing. We're like,
there's tons of 12 volt. There's tons of 12 volt options for those LED rope lights.
okay.
And then you could get fancy at Christmas. You get ones that change colors and stuff.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, you might.
Yes.
I mean, you really could. You could make something really cool. You could probably come up with something cool.
True.
Yeah, the headlamps are huge. The other thing that I use a lot are these little solar-powered lights.
Those are cool.
So I first got these when Luminae started making them a long time ago. And you blow it up and it gives you a light. And then I've recently bought another set of like 6. And so I give them some away. But yeah, if you just pull up and you can easily hang them on the side or do anything else, put them out, it gives you a quick, easy light. It lasts a really long time. And they're not super bright, so it's not going to help like the headlamp. But if you just need a little bit of light someplace easy that you can work in, out having to hold things, I've actually used that one inside the battery compartment as I was doing some work, just to give me enough light under there to see what I was doing. All right, any other questions?
Does anybody, so I live in the Southwest, and does anybody have any hints for keeping dust out of the trailer if you do go like off on dirt roads and that kind of thing? I've seen kind of a lot of people say, oh, they ended up with a lot of dust. But maybe people haven't tried it enough.
Some people carry a lot of painter's tape with them, and just before you go on the trail, just tape up your seals and just pull it back off. I've seen people do that.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Just
Yeah.
around the doors and different
And the
areas.
door and the back door and the vent,
Yeah.
probably. I think that's only,
With the filter.
yeah.
And whether it helped or not, Keith, that under the wheel wells, as you look back into there are actually some spaces on there. I just took some of that great stuff spray, mainly because I was worried about rats and not as much about mice, not as much for the dust, because we don't have that much here. And then I just painted on black after I sprayed it in there, so you can't see, so it filled the void, and to see if that would help out. But I love the painter's tape idea.
So there's some actual holes underneath in different places that probably draw right up into the trailer.
Yes. Yeah. And like the wiring coming into the battery compartment, right? So there's a little hole and there's a grommet and there's some rubber there to keep dust and other things out, but you can get dust and things in, and you get a small mouse. It's an easy path for them to crawl the wire and get up in there.
I will say serious long distance off-roaders for your camper shell and some trailers, there are some, you can replace your vent with them or add them to them that are a negative pressure situation where it's got a filter in it. And as you move, it'll actually, or positive pressure. So it creates positive pressure inside your trailer or inside your camper with a filter. And so that helps keep dust out. And that's like some really serious overlanders will use that. And then some of the overlanding camper shells actually come with them built in. That popular one that is built in South Africa. That's where they were the ones that kind of patented that positive air pressure technology. And it requires no electricity. It's just, but you know, it's when you're moving down the road.
Good question.
Keith, just bring a vacuum cleaner.
I'm lazy.
We
Well,
You got a washing machine.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Well, some of the powered dehumidifiers, which you don't need that in the Southwest, but you know, we'll have little air filters on them and stuff though too. You know, some of the little things that just have the little you know, that recirculate the air and actually have a little dust filter on them. Like I have dehumidifiers, I usually use those. They help keep the dust down a little bit too, but you don't have that problem. A humidifier might have it too, though. You might need that in the Southwest.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Dennis here and Marcia. And we've had a few improvements being done over the winter on what we bought a 2020
We got it this,
16X.
we got it this last spring.
But one thing we haven't had, and one thing we haven't had done is like an equalizer weight distribution. And I'm just wondering what the opinions are, how useful that is. I haven't really had much problem with sway, maybe because
What are you
I'm,
going with?
pardon?
What are you?
Oh, it's
going
with Jeep Cherokee. It's
And we've
but
got-
it's rated for like 5,000 pounds and
Oh.
450.
We've got the 16.
Yeah, 450
you're
pound
good.
tongue weight. You know.
You're totally good.
Here's
Oh no,
my
for
thing.
towing, right? I just but
Right.
the negatives I see are that I get, you know, it's not quite completely balanced between the front axle and the back. So I get it feels a little light in the front and, the lights naturally go a little higher. But otherwise, I don't really seem to have much problem. I don't know if it's worth getting this because it makes
I'll
this
go with the
noisier, right?
2500, so it's not that, to me, it's the big difference. I mean, I have no issue towing anything behind me.
Right, but he's towing
My-
with a smaller vehicle. So, if
So
you
here's
don't have, oh, go ahead, Neil.
Well, here's my thing. If you've had any experience towing trailers and you have the brake controller, you can manage the sway yourself. I've towed trailers my whole time. If the trailer starts to kick, you hit the button on your controller and it'll line it out pretty good, or tap the brakes. I'm pretty good. I've towed trailers since I was literally, even wagons. I've pulled 30 some off at wagons. You want to try to back something up that's hard. Try something with a front axle that moves. So I just from experience, I will say that you can control the sway yourself.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, I do have a
So-
brake
Correct.
control, yeah.
So after great consideration, what my solution I came up with, since my vehicle is capable of towing it, is I put airbags in the back, and I just ordered them today. I'm going to get a real simple airbag solution that basically it's got a cup over the top of the leaf spring connection, so that when you're not towing, you're essentially at a factory ride. You add a little air to it, and it'll bump up your back end. And if you're comfortable with dealing with the sway possibilities, because even with a heavier tow vehicle, the trailer itself can still get wild on its own, and you still need to be able to control that with the brake controller. You can live without a sway bar or weight distribution as long you have to manage your tongue weight though by loading the trailer properly.
Right.
And that's why you want to get your tongue weight right by getting your 10%. You want 500 pounds on the front to 500 to 600. You want at least 10%. Oh no, you're a 16. I'm sorry. You want 350 on yours. 350 to 400. You want 10 to 15%. So that's still going to sag the back a little bit, but if you can bump it up and you're comfortable with the sway, I think you're okay without it. And here's my thing with the sway bar. Every time you hook and unhook, you've got to mess with that thing.
Yeah.
You've got to hook the bars up and all that stuff. And if you can get away with it, and if you do go off-road, they're not really recommended for off-roading or trail riding or anything like that. So you'd want to unhook it before you go off-road. So my thing is with a unibody, I don't know about the Cherokee. Is it a frame? Does it have a regular frame, or is it a unibody construction on the Cherokee? I know some of the smaller ones. Because my thing is, because when I don't recommend weight distribution on unibody vehicle. And that's why, because if you picture the difference is a unibody construction does not have a solid steel bar that goes from front to the back of the vehicle. You're torquing that vehicle to relieve. You're creating torque to try to distribute that weight to the front of the vehicle. You're doing that via a unibody construction that has no frame. So you're torquing your vehicle. So you're taking a $60,000 to $80,000 vehicle, and you're taking that whole vehicle and twisting it the whole time you're towing, versus managing the tongue weight and not doing that. So that's why weight distribution hitches are not recommended for unibody construction. Now, if you have a solid frame construction vehicle, which most half-ton trucks or bigger do, then you put that weight distribution on it, and you're putting that torque on it. You're torquing against the frame, right? So that's solid construction. You're not damaging anything. You're not putting any wear and tear. I see people towing with like a Tesla and a weight distribution hitch, and it cringes me because all that battery and everything is all that the frame is built around the whole battery, and they're torquing that whole assembly with the pressure that those weight distribution hitches put on. That's just my 2 cents worth. So
Thank you.
and you can use the airbags in conjunction with the weight distribution hitch. So with the airbags, you just air them down, and there's literally an air nozzle, just like you air up your tires. you put however many pounds of pressure you want in it to raise the back end of your vehicle up to where you have a level ride.
Okay.
That's the solution that I
Yeah.
landed on. But there are times when a weight distribution hitch will make your ride down a highway. If you're driving a frame vehicle and you're going to be doing a lot of interstate ride, I recommend a weight distribution hitch for that because it will just make it more comfortable. The trailer itself won't move around as much. And I think it probably even keeps the contents of your trailer a little bit, you know, less jostled. So that's my 2 cents on it. And I have, like I said, I grew up on a farm, so I've towed since I was 5 years old and pulled every slide shape and trailer you can imagine, except not a lot of fifth wheels, but that's another story. And we're not in that discussion anyway.
Okay,
And
thank
to
you.
Neil's point, I actually have a Tahoe that'll pull 8,400 pounds. And I do have the weight distribution hitch, the equalizer, but I'm mainly using it not because of weight distribution and not because of the sway, but it just that going down the interstate, which is where I have to do a lot of my traveling, it does minimize some of the movement as you're going down the road. My truck's not unibody. If you get to the larger Suburbans from Chevy, it is unibody, but the Tahoe's not. And so what I found is I'm going down the road, I've towed without it. And sometimes I use the same hitch because you don't have to put the bars on, right? So I can use the same hitch and tow as I carry it to my storage. I don't put the tow bars on it, the weight distribution bars, because it is a bit of a pain. The power jack helps because once you put with the equalizer, once you put the ball into the hitch, lock it in, you actually have to take your jack, either manual or electric, and raise the back end of your truck up to be able to get the bars in. I didn't realize that until after I watched a video, after I put it on. I'm like, why can't I get this bar up in there? I was about to kill myself trying to put it in. You raise it up, which makes you worry a little bit. It doesn't really hurt it, and put it on. The main difference I found is that, and I did that because of an incident on the road where I almost got into some sway, and I said, you know what, let me just be safe and do it. But I find as I'm going down the road, whether it's an 18-wheeler passing me, or I've got 100 cars going past me at 90 and I'm doing 55 or 60, right? I get less of the movement from the truck or the trailer. It all is a much smoother, comfortable ride on the interstate. If I'm going off-road or I'm going out in the backwoods or just traveling around, I don't put on those bars. If I'm gonna hit the long road, and I'm one of those that I'll do 16 hours on a motorcycle, doing 8 or 10 hours pulling the base camp is not a problem, right? It gets a bit tiring and having to stop. I put it on there because it's just a smoother ride on the interstate. And then when I'm moving around at campground and other stuff, I'll leave the bars off. So it helps a little bit. It really doesn't do a lot for the weight distribution on my Tahoe. I noticed after I did the measurements from equalizer, it was somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch difference. That was it, right? And so I debated the airbags, but it wasn't making enough of a difference in the weight distribution for my truck to need the airbags. I'm hoping to upgrade to a truck whenever the prices come back down anyway. So it was a comfort factor. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. It's, do you want to spend $700 or $800 on something that you'll use sometimes? If it gives you comfort, do it, right? If it's a smoother ride and you feel that way, do it. You have, most people, to Neil's point, you don't need it, you don't have to use it, and you're fine without it.
Okay, and you didn't have a problem installing it yourself then at all?
No, it was, you just go through the book and the measurements. There's an old, it's probably 6 or 7 year old video now that Equalizer put together out on YouTube, and you just follow the steps. I double checked it 3 or 4 times just to make sure you fill in, you literally take a tape measure and you're measuring the front tire to the fender, and you're going through and doing a couple of times. It just slides into the receiver on the back, just like the others. I did, and I think, Neil, you mentioned it earlier about the 4 bolts on the shroud over the propane tanks. I did undo those bolts, and I lifted the shroud off to put the little brackets on the side. I do torque them every time I travel if I'm going to use it. So I think they're at 75 foot-pounds for those nuts on those. So I torque those just like I double check the torque on my lug nuts on the tires. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. So it's, if you want a little extra comfort and you're going to do long drives, it may be helpful that you don't feel as much of the pressure from the big trucks and things as they go past you. But you can tow without it.
I have another word of caution though on the weight distribution hitches though. So what you're doing when you raise the tongue up, you know, at your and the back of your tow vehicle with the jack, is you're lifting all the weight off. So a lot of times people will overuse the weight distribution hitch. So they're adjustable on how much torque they can have. And you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to manage your tongue weight with your weight distribution hitch. You still want the proper amount of tongue weight because that doesn't change. I mean, you still want the 10%. You don't want to have 700 pounds, on a 20, you know, you don't want to have 700 pounds up front and then manage that with that weight distribution hitch because like some of them, it's a link of a chain or whatever. And that extra link of chain is you're putting too much stress on it. So just don't manage your tongue weight with your weight distribution hitch, especially on some of the lighter weight vehicles.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and especially Neil and Anna. Thanks for all your feedback. Awesome, great to see you on and jumping in. I will, after I hit stop, the recording will come in. I'll get this loaded, and since I typed up most of the questions ahead of time, I'll put those in. At some point, I'll come back and add the timestamps so that people that weren't able to join can come in and jump to the right portions in the video. But thanks for all your feedback, advice, and hopefully this will help for the other folks that are either buying the Basecamp or using it and they couldn't be here tonight. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for organizing this. We
Yeah.
appreciate
Bye,
it.
bye, Anna.
Yeah.
Good night,
Anna.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Be safe.